All right, everybody, welcome to New Normal. We are excited to continue the speaker series. As we continue to go with this, we've realized how truly important it is to have a platform like this. We started this out as a means to be really proactive with our approach to all the changes around us and how we were going to support each other, find a way not just to get through the pandemic from a business standpoint, but thrive in the pandemic, position ourselves in a way so that when we're on the other side of this, we're better off for it. And it's actually even developed even more as of late to a focus on mental health and mental health awareness, which we really appreciate and is near and dear to our hearts. So we're very excited to continue this speaker series. We appreciate everybody's support, all of the speakers, guest speakers who have come on, and we're very excited for today's session. And I'll pass it over to my co-host Ryan from the wonderful group at CoMotion, who, if you know CoMotion, you know that they are a number one unwavering business support in our community in so many different ways. I've never seen any organization, let alone any other co-working organization, approach business support, entrepreneurship, balance, mental health and well-being the way that CoMotion does. And I'm very proud to be able to work with them and do things like this with Ryan and his team. And so I'll pass over to you, Ryan, and we'll take it from here.
Well, thank you very much, Brett. That was possibly the best thing that could ever be said about CoMotion. So I'm gonna pause there and not allow anything else to be said. Thank you very much, Brett, and thank you everyone for joining us today. Today we're lucky enough to be joined by Tanvir Bhangoo. So to introduce him, Tanvir is the partner and managing director at TB Momentum. Tanvir is a Canadian entrepreneur and recognized global thought leader in digital transformations and team performance in fast-paced digital environments. Formerly, he was the VP of Tech at Freshii and Director at RBI, which include 3G Capital, Burger King, Tim Hortons, Popeyes. As chairman of TB Momentum, he enables F1000 and enterprise teams to do more with less, drive revenues, and execute in fast-paced digital environments through learner, adaptable, and sports-minded teams. Tanvir introduced the FPE methodology, a framework borrowed from pro sports teams that allow corporate teams to find sustained momentum regardless of uncertainty or change. He is also the founder of Hardpoint, a Fortune 500 boutique consultancy helping enterprises mobilize strategies and grow through digital and emerging tech. So welcoming Tanvir today, thank you very much. And that's a very impressive bio to begin with. I would also like to point out, just as a Mac grad, as you are too, that you are also on the, Yates. Sorry.
The Vanier, yeah.
The Vanier, that's it. Sorry, the Vanier winning McMaster University football team, 2011, and possibly one of the greatest Canadian football games ever played. With how many overtimes was that? They were just nail biting and
2, yeah. Well, yeah. First of all, appreciate you guys having me on, and second, Ryan, that's probably the best intro anybody's given me. So appreciate it, man. It was a Vanier. It was the Yates for the first time in like many years. It was my 4th year, and then the Vanier was in Vancouver, and we're winning 21-0, I think, at halftime, and then Laval came back and tied. Mm-hmm. And then it went to double overtime. So it was a nail biter, but good news. Yeah.
And it was the part 2 too. So it was those were quite a 2 years in terms of McMaster sports. So yeah. Well, that's great. Well, welcome, Tanvir, and it's great to have you on today. Awesome. And I should point out too that this is actually a fairly global episode as well. So we have, of course, Brad in Costa Rica, and we have Tanvir's actually coming to us from Dallas. So it's really cool. And of course, I'm coming from Old Hamilton. So first of all, I guess, Brad, do you maybe want to kick us off with questions?
I would love to. We actually have, we've shifted gears, as I said earlier, to a pretty strong focus on mental health and mental health awareness. We really feel like the need is there. People need this support. We need to be having these conversations right now. The last thing, that we need is to pretend that everything's okay if it isn't. We need to talk about it and make sure people know that there are people out there who care about them. There are ways to combat a lot of depression and a lot of the things that are people are dealing with and struggling with right now. And we have sort of formulated and curated a list of questions. But with your background, I want to go certainly off script, and something that's been really top of mind for me, and I want to get your thoughts on, is how much of a missed opportunity have we seen, in all government PR and communications and, businesses communications saying, sterilize your hands, wear masks and social distance, sterilize, masks, social distance. Nobody is talking about health and wellness, physical activity and exercise, where we have, upwards in, very high majority of people who are dying from COVID are morbidly obese, sedentary lifestyle, poor diet, and all of this other kind of stuff. I would love to hear your thoughts on what people who are otherwise sedentary and poor diets, how can we shift mindset and shift perspective for the health and well-being of our community and have a better focus on physical activity and nutrition?
Brad, that's a great point you bring up. And I'll start with this, right? First of all, I consider myself to be fortunate to be part of a great group, right? It's a great support system. I built a great system for myself where I do certain things every day that keep me sane, where I have to make sure that I get the workout in, right? I have to make sure that I'm eating properly. I have to make sure that I'm taking the time to balance. Like, I tend to go really hard sometimes at work, but I have boundaries. So for me, it's I've been fortunate enough to have support to build that for myself. And the only way that, and I was talking about it yesterday on my other podcast, the only way I was able to stay sane in this time is luckily by being in Dallas, because the gyms are open, hands down. Right. So when I came here last year in July, I was at a point where I was like, if I can't work out anymore, if I cannot go and get all of this reset myself every single day, I would have started probably losing that anchor that I have that's allowed me to build and sustain such a crazy busy lifestyle. Right.
Yeah.
And to put in perspective, I lost 80 pounds in 7 months back right after graduated, after the Vanier Cup game. And that was a starting point of my anchor. It was like, hey, I've lost this weight, and this is what's going to allow me to move forward. I'm going to make sure to stay consistent. This is going to then drive off other behaviors of mine, which means waking up early, which is going to then drive to preparation, which will then drive me to make sure that I'm executing at work, make sure that I can go and speak to the right people, the networks that I have. It all kind of spiraled. It all started from the top of the funnel that I call, which is that health, right? For me, being healthy allowed me to do all those things. And when COVID hit, I was in Toronto when the gyms shut down. The third or the fourth month, I started feeling that point that allowed me to do all these great things in the past 6-7 years was now being taken away. So I absolutely agree that there is not much being done for the mental health side of things, and there's not been much, I guess, light being shed on what can we do to stay sane, especially if you are in a corporate role, right? Which I was before I started my own business. It's already hard enough with the pressure you have, right? You're performing, especially for competitive. Now going into a world where you're on Zoom all day long, there's no more home versus office. And because we have to make sure, especially if you're in a B2C company, you are servicing guests, and guests are what the guest demands is what actually dictates your business, which means in COVID, demands go higher. Let's say for a restaurant retail company, guests want to make sure they're safe, which means the people at the office now have to be performing even better and harder and at a higher level, which means that now you're already on Zoom, you have nobody to speak to, you don't have that anchor anymore, and you still have to perform with teams that are dispersed, and it's very easy to get misunderstandings between each other, and you have to make sure that you're staying sane. So that entire thing, I think, is something that we're all going to look back on and say, hey, we could have probably done a better job.
Yeah. And you know what, we just happened to be, or I just happened to be on this call with, you know, two men in particular who I know for a fact prioritize nutrition and physical fitness, and are also both very, you know, very highly driven business professionals. You know, and I would actually, I'm going to turn this around a little bit, and I'm going to bring you in on this as well, Ryan. But can either of you speak to, can you look back in history at a time where maybe you didn't prioritize it as much, didn't make the space, let the stress take hold, let the, you know, cheap, easy food fixes take hold, and where was your mental state then in being able to support your drive and support your community and your relationships versus when you have all that stuff in check?
Oh, that's a good question. Tanvir, I'd look to you first. If you have any thoughts,
sure.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I can tell you it was probably before I did my MBA, after graduating, right? This is a big reason why I'm starting this community, the student athlete community. I call it the Momentum community, right? Mm-hmm. So I graduated after college, 5 years. And for me, my first 3 years was all about, hey, I want to go to the CFL. I want to work my ass off. This is all I care about. School was okay, getting the 70s and whatever you need to make sure the scholarship is there. But it's all about trying to get to the pro level, right? Fourth year comes in, I have a change of mind. I realize that, hey, I don't really want to go pro, or maybe, you know, the injuries are not going to let me sustain the professional life. So at that point, it was almost like I had decided that I'm going to finish my 5th year of school and then go into the business world, right? What happened was, when I graduated, I did not have the skills that the employers were looking for back in, you know, 2011, 2012, which was how you interview, how you show up professionally, how you're polished. I didn't do the mock interviews. I didn't do the resume sessions. I didn't go do networking events. So that 1 year for me after graduating was probably the toughest, because I had all this great weight. I was used to working 3 hours a day with 20 guys in the gym. Now I went to not having that family anymore, and instead having to go and find a job. I had no idea how to start finding a job. I didn't have a resume to my 4th year. And for me, it was like, hey, everything that defines me right now was this big guy, this sports guy, doesn't mean anything anymore, right? So I kind of hit rock bottom that time. So that was probably for me the worst point, and it took a toll, right? Because as you're saying, can't work out as much because you're not working out for anything,
right?
Which means you're still eating the bad food, and you're like, hey, whatever, I'll eat a pizza here and there. It's not gonna matter. You go and you're getting rejected, and at that point, you're too young to understand that, hey, you have to fix these things for it to see the ROI later down the road, right? So for me, that was probably the point that you mentioned, Brad.
Yeah. I think for me, I mean, I get especially the stress levels amp up. I've been pretty good with maintaining a certain lifestyle. I mean, now that I'm married, I'm probably actually a bit more gluttonous than I was as a bachelor, just because my wife definitely doesn't want to eat the way I used to eat, which was very Spartan. Like I would boil chicken breasts at the start of the week, or eat tinned fish, and no one really wants to do that with me. But I'd say the closest was like, I once went running back in, I think it was like 2016 and 2015 maybe. And I went to jump over something while running, and it caught my foot, and I Supermaned and kind of belly flopped on concrete and broke my toe. And then proceeded to run because I was like, walk it off. And then later on that night, I was in excruciating pain and went to the emergency room. Like, yeah, your toe's broken. So because of that, I wasn't doing much for about 5 to 6 weeks. And that was probably the most concentrated example for me of just the toll that not moving can take on you. Because in that time, I definitely felt like stress and everything ramp up because I wasn't doing that regular exertion that would be a part of my habit.
Yeah. And I think it's, you know, one thing that I'm hoping to sort of crack the nut on with you gentlemen, and obviously, especially Tanvir, is this, the perspective on health and wellness, because I feel that your physical health and wellness is going to directly impact your mental health and wellness. And that's what we're all here to talk about right now. And I think this is a good opportunity with you, Tanvir, on the call, to be able to dig a little bit deeper into, putting the rubber to the road, and like, how do we actually increase our endorphins and work on scheduling and our mindset and make things better. And I think that a lot of people, probably the vast majority of people who look at physical fitness or changing their diet or whatever that is, they're not looking at it as a lifestyle change. They're looking at it as a interim solution to something that they want to fix. Like, I want to lose 40 pounds. So then you go to Google and you say, Google, how do I quickly lose 40 pounds in 6 weeks, or whatever it is, versus, how do I lay the blueprint for a lifestyle that I'm not going to be torturing myself to lose 40 pounds. I'm going to be doing all these other things that I love, that are making me happy, that make me feel good. And as a byproduct of that, 4 months from now, I might lose 40 pounds, or 5 months, whatever it is. I'd be interested to hear your thoughts, Tanvir, on, and especially specific to people who are entrepreneurs and who are running businesses and who are high test, push to the limit, adrenal glands and no time in a day. What do you say to people like that?
So I'll have two answers, right? The first one is that anytime someone tells you I don't have time to work out, I call it bullshit.
Yeah.
It's just lack of prioritization, right?
Yep.
Yes.
And it is, right? And the second thing is, they don't realize that the 1 hour you spend trying to stay fit 4 times a week will actually save you a lot of time down the road, because you're more effective, you're more efficient, and it allows you to be in a better state of mind, right? So for me, I had this saying with my team back in corporate, that the days I don't work out, don't ask me to make any big decisions, because I can't. My mind isn't working in the state of mind, right? So they all knew that, hey, he didn't work out today, so let's not take big things for him, because he's probably a little slower. And that's the reason why I started working out every single day of the week. And for me, it was like, and I made myself believe. So even back in the MBA, and I was actually living, after the MBA, I was living up north with my parents for a little bit in Caledon, and I would drive an hour and 10 minutes to Oakville to work at the Tim Hortons office. And that's an hour and 10 one way and then an hour and 10 back. And I still would work out in the mornings, because I knew if I don't wake up at 5, my entire day is going to be shit. And if I don't perform, I probably won't last that much longer in this career that I want to be in. That was simple. And for me, that's probably the biggest reason. 1, football, and 2 is the dedication that I forced myself. And I actually had a really strong, someone on my podcast yesterday. So Cedric Clark from the US, and he's a VP of ops at a Fortune 500. He played basketball in NCAA. He said this thing, that the discipline, the pain of discipline is a lot better than the pain of regret. So if you're disciplined in the morning, you're disciplined to make sure you're hitting the 4 or 5 things you have to do on a daily basis, that's a lot better to swallow than regretting, saying, I wish I had done that. So it goes back to saying that first of all, you got to make yourself believe that whatever you're going to do is going to allow you to see the results, and then 2, stick with it, right? So that was the thing for me. And the other thing I'll mention is the rubber to the road thing, Brad, you said, is I knew back, right, as I told my story after graduated, right before I started my MBA, I'm like, I have to get in shape, because if I don't get in shape, I won't be able to sustain a great entrepreneurial or a corporate lifestyle, because the lack of fitness will get in the way. So for me, it was saying, how am I going to drop 70 pounds to be the 210, 220, so that my body needs minimal maintenance, 4 times a week, hit training, eat great food, have a cheat meal once a week, still enjoy the lifestyle. And then that takes care of itself. And now I can focus my energy on business. For me, if I didn't do that, and if I was still 290 pounds, no way in hell would I have been able to work 12 hours a day, hands down.
Right.
Yep. Yeah.
Right.
That's where it started.
So I think that's a beautiful point. And if I'm hearing you correctly, what you're saying is that you found something that you love and care so deeply about, that you said to yourself, I'm not willing to make any compromises in pursuing this as a success. So I think that you know, that could be translated to anybody, you know, whether it's business or your family or, you know, your hobby or whatever it is. I feel like we all need to, you know, and you guys met from Chris's podcast. We need to find that why. You know, what is it that is going to drive you so hard because you love it so much to say, you know, I need to get up in the morning. And you don't have to go and be a professional and work out for an hour and a half and lift heavy weights and all this stuff. Do whatever your step one is, do step one and just do it consistently. You know, that could be a walk around the block, you know.
The one thing I'll add quickly in there, Brad, is the how behind it is, I think everybody should know, how do you do this? It's a very simple concept from business, right? It's called what drives your top level goal. So for me, let's say simple example was to build a business career or be in corporate and get, you know, from X position to X position, right? That's my overall objective. Find 3 drivers that will help you get there. Driver number 1 for me was fitness. Driver number 2 for me was analytical mindset. And driver number 3 for me was relationships, right? And then you say, what do you have to do on a daily basis to hit these 3 drivers that you know will get you the top level goal? So for me, it was working out. 2, make sure I'm doing my case studies and I'm learning and how to present, how to think analytically. And number 3, learning how to manage teams and actually be someone that can work with different types of personalities, right? How do you do that? You work out on 4 times a week. How do you do the analytical piece? You go and read up on McKinsey quarterly articles. How do you do the other part for relationships? You read a bunch of books, or you actually practice, or you take a bunch of courses. So you very concrete action items on a weekly basis. You literally schedule it into your calendar and you just do it without thinking. And you'll see in 3
it's not rocket science
months, it gets easy. Just schedule it in and go.
So I'm going to actually, kind of what you're touching on is the whole kind of idea of habit stacking. And you seem to me like a prime example of someone who's really effectively habit stacking. Like you're a very habitual person. I don't know if you feel that's correct, but also, how have you kind of built to that point? And do you feel that you have lapses, and how do you address those?
Absolutely. So I'll tell you right now, I've gone up and down, and let's say just for fitness, I've gone up and down in my fitness level. So sometimes 220, sometimes 235. And I'm like, shit, this is not good, right? So I have lapses for sure. What do I do from a fitness perspective to make sure that I don't lapse much? I give myself a cheat day once a week. I give, I'll eat 3,000 calories, 3,500 calories. It doesn't matter what it is. The lineman comes out. So I still have the large pizza, right?
The breakfast buffet. At Commons,
At Commons with the hash, double meat, right? That's good memories. Same way for business, right? You give yourself 1 weekend out of 4. So I have my weekends where I say, this weekend we're going to be studying. I'm going to study this part. I'm going to read up on this. Give yourself 1 out of 4 weekends off, just so you don't feel like shit for missing out on something. You can schedule some things around. And I'm as an entrepreneur in the past like 8 months, I'm learning this again because I'm someone who will fill up my schedule with every little thing I can do. And after a week later, I realized that, hey, it's not going to work out like that anymore because things keep coming throughout the day. And I feel like crap because I couldn't get through all of them. So my expectations of myself were too high.
Right.
So I went back and reduced the amount of thing I could do so I can actually focus on things that matter and give myself a bit of flexibility, right? So build in flexibility and build in some cheat days.
Okay. No, that's a great point.
And I think to that point, we can talk a little bit about the discrepancy and understanding of what self-care means. What is self-care? A lot of people are like, oh, I had a hard day today, so I'm going to have a little self-care and sit in the bathtub and have a bottle of wine. Like, that's not really self-care. That's, you're like, you can have a glass of wine every once in a while, but if you're downing a bottle of wine, you're literally poisoning your body. You're going to feel like shit the next day and you're going to have a hard day then. And it's just going to compound your stress for the week. Self-care is more about, being methodical and making space for things that are going to make your life easier, make your life happier, bring balance to your life. Not, I'm going to go eat this comfort food and self-care. No, that's a very temporary, uptick in serotonin that is good. You're going to pay for times 10, come the next day. And not to say that you can't do something like that, but I think it's important for us to understand better, everybody to understand better what self-care actually is. Would you mind speaking to what you see in yourself, what you see from people close to you? What does self-care look like to you?
Yeah. So self-care for me, Brad, is probably the 3 or 4 things that I believe I will do that'll help me get reset, right? So for one of those things is for me taking a little longer during the weekdays or weekends on my fitness. So I'll do some bit of yoga, right? Because I feel that there's a lot of tension in the body. Self-care for me also means to take a pause on the weekend to just not think about anything from work. So just let the mind, mind is a powerful thing, right? And I see this all the time where the more you think about things, the worse it gets. So, and it's just very hard to let go. But when you let go of something for a day, for me, I come back to that problem and it's very different. I can approach it differently. I can fix the problem differently. So for me, self-care there would be actually don't stress about the stuff that's on your plate. Give yourself time to just sit in silence, to do things. And whether it's like, again, to building in the flexibility, right? It's okay if you're going to spend 3 hours watching Netflix once in a while, but every day you shouldn't be doing that. So almost like I give myself kind of a free card, a card that I can use once a week or a card I can use once a month, that it's like, it's okay, I need this right now, we're going to come back tomorrow stronger. This is self-care for me, but it doesn't mean I have 10 of those cards. I can't use that card every single day. It has to be balanced, and you use it when you really need to, and pick 2 or 3 things that are going to make you feel better.
Yeah.
My trainer down here is really great. And he has a saying that he says all the time: be good 80% of the time, 100% of the time.
Exactly.
Which I think is great. Like
the Anchorman type phrase.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
50% of the time, it works 100% of the time. Which I think is great because, I think for a lot of us, and I'm speaking about this a lot because I love getting your insight on this. And I was on the other side of this fence for 20 years, and I'm just more recently starting to understand a little bit more about why I was that way, and knowing that you don't have to be that way. And it's not this giant hill to climb that's so intimidating for people. I was one of those guys where I would, if I were to start a diet or a workout routine, it had to be either on a Monday to start the week, or it had to be on the 1st of the month, or something that was like a psychological, like, okay, I'm going to start it on this, but when you do that,
so New Year's resolutions don't work, right?
What's that?
Yeah.
New Year's resolutions, that's exactly why they don't work.
100%.
Yeah.
And when you do stuff like that, you set yourself up for failure, because you're always going to have a step back. And you can either look at your position on things as, I'm going to have steps back here and there, but if I'm good 80% of the time, 100% of the time, I'm fine.
Yeah.
Or if you're so locked into this systemic, setup of like, I'm starting on the 1st, or New Year's resolution, or whatever that is, and you falter, you say, well, fell off that train, and then you're gone.
Yeah.
And you don't have to be gone.
It's like, I mean, what you're kind of touching on, and then to come back to something kind of Tanvir kind of touch on, and then get your thoughts on it, Tanvir, is it's sort of the 80% go, which I'm always a big fan of like, if you keep striving for that 100% kind of perfection before launching ahead with something, the likelihood of launching ahead with it is you're going to be intimidated.
Yeah. 100%.
The other item that I really like that you kind of mentioned, Tanvir, is that idea of like taking a step back and allowing something to digest. I finished Brene Brown's Rising Strong a couple months ago, and something that's been kind of just tinkering around my mind since then is one of her things that she said of the shitty first draft. I mean, she talks about it as sort of like a response to things, but it's easily translatable across anything you do realistically, of just doing something, getting that shitty first draft down, letting it kind of sink in, step away from it, then come back and start working on it. So I don't know if you maybe want to comment on that, because you're kind of going down that road.
Absolutely. And I come from the tech background, and this is exactly how I operated. Anytime we launch anything, is just get it out of the gates.
Yeah.
I mean, you're never going to get perfect, right? So whether it's, to your point, anything in life, whether it's technology, you're launching an app, whether it's a new marketing campaign, whether it's a workout, whether it's a new business, whether it's whatever it might be. Just figure something out very, very quickly, very, very fast, and go, right?
Yep.
The whole point, and this is another thing I want to talk about, is we got to change our definition of failure, right? Failure is only failure when you decide to stop. So a quick example is at one of the places I worked at, we ran a project for three months, which was huge, and it didn't deliver on the result, right? So I'm not going to get into what it was. It didn't really deliver on the result, which was, let's try this, and hopefully it gives us results we need, and then we can go and launch it across the entire business. Unfortunately, at the 3-month mark, it was not something that was feasible. Now, to most people at that point, it seemed like the entire team wasted 3 months of their time, right? But for us, if we hadn't done those 3 months of work, we would not have found the path that we were on, which allowed us to save 7 figures in cost.
Right.
So that set up that next path, which if we hadn't done that, we wouldn't be where we were today. So it's I call it execution, not failure.
Love that.
That's great. Yeah.
We had a great example of that internally with Jet Propelled, where Jacqueline, our operations specialist, and I, we went down this path, and we were working on a new thing, and we thought it was exactly what we needed to introduce into our operations. And we spent several months going back and forth and working on this thing, and then we got all the data back, and we looked at it, and we're like, I don't think we need this. And we talked about it afterwards, and it was just like, okay, cool, that's fine. We're better now than we were yesterday. Yeah. So I don't care how much time it took to figure that out. Like, we now know that that's not what we need, and we don't need to spend any more time on it. We've got a better direction. Let's go. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I really love, and I didn't really think about this until, hearing from you, Tanvir, and getting some of your insights, but holy hell, are there ever a lot of parallels between entrepreneurship, business development, and lifestyle design, right? I mean, all of the same exact principles can be put into play in both of those sides of the coin, right?
Huge.
Yeah. Well, I think you're reading my mind back, because that's exactly where I wanted to go next. Was talking a bit about how you translate, Tanvir, sort of the athletic mindset and training mindset into kind of methodologies that you've created in some of your business focuses. If you want to maybe begin to introduce that and talk a bit about that as well.
Absolutely. So I'll start with myself personally, right? So again, when I was transitioning into the corporate business, for me it was, look, we got to do 3 or 4 things really good personally, and if I'm my team, for me to succeed. So in sports and football, let's say you got to hit the weight room, you got to make sure you're measuring your stats, you got to make sure that you're practicing, and the practices are very structured, and you got to eat, and you got to repeat, right? So literally it was 3 or 4 great things that you had to do. And I brought this over into my personal calendar, let's say, call it, for the year, right? Starting back in 2012, 2013. That allowed me to get better at whatever direction I wanted to go into, right? So that principle is discipline. Simple, right? What happens as a discipline is that you get confident because you're executing on something, you're seeing results. That confidence allows you to then grow into something a bit more mature. And so for me, it was like, hey, I'm confident, I'm going to prepare more, right? And then you can start executing.
Everybody out there with imposter syndrome, which there's a ton of you out there, this is for you. And me, 100%. Yeah. So
the funny thing is, this is how I started my tech career, right? I didn't go to school for tech. I was in BCom and MBA, right? And there was no technology. So I did a project for someone back in the MBA that I reached out to after I was at ExxonMobil, that I wanted to go to a more faster paced company. And this VP of HR said, hey, we'd love to have you in this role. I'm like, all right, let's do it. I show up. I didn't know what the job was about. I didn't know the job description or anything like that. And it was literally a project management role. And I say, okay, let's do it. Right. It was for Tim Hortons. And when I started, it was like a technology role. So here I am, no idea about technology. Didn't do it in school. I knew the frameworks of how to make decisions, but I had a choice. It was either I was going to say, look, I don't know how to do this stuff, so I'm gonna kind of, just let it, let the fate dictate what happens. Or I can go back to the frameworks of football, pick 3 things I need to get better at, and literally repeat them. So I did that. I'm like, I got to get better at applications. I got to get better at how do you work in different systems. I need to get better at executing digital products. So I just literally put it in my calendar and started executing and getting better on a daily basis, right? And that, to me, again, if you apply sports into my own career, allowed me to get confidence, execute, and that almost started to say, hey, look, this stuff isn't that hard. I can do it. A lot of other people can do it. And this is what I'm teaching now. Like a lot of these younger kids, it's like, it doesn't matter what you want to get into, as long as you can build a 3 or 4 action items in your calendar, in your vision, just go hard on it, right? So to answer your question, Ryan, that's probably the first application of sports to business. Now, when I bring that over to a business environment, right? So when I started managing teams, led a huge digital transformation over the past 2 to 3 years, is the exact same thing. Technology is not the problem. Process is not the problem. It's how do you move the people? How do you execute on this goal? So in football, it's all about, hey, the coach needs to decide who to bring in the team. The coach needs to decide what kind of system is going to run. The coach has to be a servant leader to make sure that the players show up. And the coach needs to make sure that when the players are on the field, even if they don't believe in the play that the coach called, they still execute it to 100% perfection to the best of their abilities, right? That was my playbook. So I built the team of like 8 in 2 months. I hired for potential not experience. And I was there with them in the trenches. It's like, look, guys, I don't know how to do this. This is my first time also leading an end-to-end digital transformation. We're all in this together. We're going to hit roadblocks, but we're going to make sure that we have the system. I'm going to be here with you guys. I'm going to let you make some mistakes. I'm going to make some mistakes, but it's going to be just like a football team. We're going to play different positions. We're going to win some. We're going to lose some. But we're going to keep getting better every week. And that was what I applied on the business side. And over these 2 are the foundations that I'm now seeing emerge in a more formal way on how to apply the sports to business side.
Right.
Yeah. So hope that helps.
That's awesome. No, that's fantastic. Brett, do you have anything to go on there?
I want to sort of calibrate, I guess, your thoughts and this conversation for other people in our audience. Setting the stage, I mean, you're very high performing individual, in sports, in business. There are going to be entrepreneurs out there that are certainly high functioning, high performing people, maybe not to the same level. So, but are still doing really great work and are still trying to figure it out, depending on where they are in their career. So, you're saying like take 3 or 4 things that are going to impact your business or your personal health and well-being in a positive way. It might be one thing, and that's great. If you had 0 things before, and you just say, you know what, I'm going to commit to making space in my life for one thing that I know that is going to be a positive difference, that is going to change your world. And the more you go to introduce those things, it's like learning how to learning how to introduce things that are healthy and positive to your life is a skill. And so if you're starting with that one thing, you're in grade 1, or learning how to introduce healthy things in your life 101. And then you're in 102, and then all of a sudden you're in university, and you're any given time you could say to yourself, I want to make a change in my life. What do I want? And then it's yours.
Brad, and you're so right. It will snowball, right? Just try one thing. I was reading an article where there's a person was swimming like 3 miles, and what's going on in this person's mind was he kept thinking about how far is the shore, but then when he started to look at, hey, we just got to take it stride by stride, stroke by stroke, he was able to get to his final goal. The point being, don't look at the end journey. Don't look at where you want to go. Look at day by day, step by step. What do you have to do today? One thing. Like next thing you know, that one thing becomes 2 things because now you're so good at the first one, right? The other thing I'll add in here also to your point, Brad, is for a lot of entrepreneurs out there, I was able to do more because I decided to only focus on this one goal I had in mind. If you have a goal in terms of some hobbies, or you want to spend more time at home, whatever that is, it's a personal choice. So you got to make sure that you pick and you're balancing it out. For me, it was a personal choice to really focus on this career goal. So we want to make sure that's clear. And the second thing I'll say is that we need to celebrate, and here's why. So let's take the example of my past 3 years. I was running a huge transformation, right? So in technology, it's very hard to launch something in under a year. It takes a long time, which means you have a team. And this is especially, it's going to be more relevant now in 2022, 23, because everybody has to do digital transformation, which means that digital transformation is going to take you such a long time before you see the ROI. The last thing you want is have a team that's working on this digital transformation burn themselves out in 6 months because they're not seeing results, because you won't. This stuff takes time. You have to build digital products. You have to get the entire company to change. You have to launch things. You have to learn from customers. You got to make mistakes. It's so important. And this is my old boss, the CEO, amazing person. He said this to me. He said, you have to celebrate the small wins, even though others don't see it as a result, because this is your off season. So whatever your off season is, you know, you're putting in the work. You might not get paid today, but you got to celebrate the small wins. You got a new podcast guest. Like for me, I celebrate that, because this is building something bigger. I get, you know, a new idea that we've executed on and we saw good data on. We celebrate that, even though it's not going to get you dollars. It's showing you you're moving in the right direction, and in 2-3 years' time, these small steps are going to allow you to then become this huge machine.
Right.
And make sure, you know, adding to that, I agree with you wholeheartedly. You know, adding to that, surround yourself with people who are going to celebrate with you. You know, because there are a lot of people out there that struggle in business because they have all these wild ideas and they're ready to take the first step, and there's somebody saying, how are you going to make that work? That sounds crazy, you know, whatever that is. Or, you know, you think walking around the block is going to get you in shape, or any of that stuff. It's like, good, you know, separate yourself from people who are like that, and make sure you have people around you who are saying, oh my God, taking a walk around the block sounds like a great idea. You're going to get fresh air, your legs are going to feel good, you're going to feel clearer in thought, you know, and any business things as well. Like, make sure you're surrounding yourself with positively encouraging people, like the kind folks at CoMotion.
Yeah. One thing I want to add there quickly is there's this huge culture of, I need to find a mentor. I need to find a lot of coaches. And a lot of people do that the wrong way. They try to find someone who hasn't been there before and is giving them advice, and they take this advice as if this is their plan. Stop finding leaders, stop finding coaches or mentors just for the sake of mentorship. Find someone that's going to challenge you to get to your goal versus somebody who almost demotivates you. So that's a huge thing. And
celebrate with you.
And accelerate with you, right?
Yeah. No, that makes a ton of sense. Well, I think we're coming up on just about within that 5-minute mark. I feel like we could probably do a to be continued episode with Tanvir in terms of picking up again.
Yeah, this is great.
I know you've had an interesting year too, in terms of like journeys, both physically, in terms of actually cross country across the year, but also your own kind of developments from a business perspective. I wonder if maybe just to cap it off, if you want to, since we've all been on this global journey across 2020 and now to 2021, maybe talk a bit about your year and just also where you see things going into 2021.
Absolutely. So I've, you know, to your point, Ryan, I made a cross country trip from Toronto to Dallas. So we actually drove. My wife and I, took us about 4 days. It's the middle of Corona. Don't recommend it, but we had to because for other personal reasons. Now we're in Dallas, and you know, one of the things that came across with the opportunity, which is a silver lining for me, is you got to look at COVID as something where, you know, how do you take this and learn from it and make it your advantage, right? For me, it was working remotely and literally trying all the things that I had in my mind that I wanted to do in my life, right? It allowed me to do that. It allowed me to move down with my wife that we've been away for long distance for more than 5 years. Amazing. So, you know, I leveraged this into a silver lining for myself. Right. And then that allowed me to start some of the different ventures. So 2021, I see myself, it's really a few things, is doing a lot more keynotes. So we're actually, as part of Momentum, TB Momentum, we're helping businesses. A lot of stuff we talked about today is really, how do you become that how do you maximize the team performance as a business in a digital first environment, especially when morale is low. There's a lot of different concepts from the world of sports that we can leverage. So focusing on that, on keynotes, on workshops, as well as a huge year for very similar to what you guys are doing, the podcast, right? There's there's a huge need right now with young leaders that are trying to get in the business world, that are aspiring to be executives. They just don't know where to start, even though they have all the right skills. So, my effort is this year to really grow that and bring it to light, where we have a lot of the professional athletes who were student athletes before and have found their way to becoming executives, and what kinds of skill sets did they use, which isn't rocket science. It's hard work, dedication, finding that the why, and how can they show
getting out of your own way,
exactly, and sharing that with a lot of the younger professionals that can then use it as fuel in their career. So that's just my little attempt. I hope to bring it to more people in 2021.
That's fantastic. What a way to wrap it up too.
And then last but not least, where do people find you?
Oh, that's awesome. You can find me on LinkedIn, and you can follow our podcast, the Sports to Business Podcast, on all major platforms. And you can visit my website at tanvirbhangoo.com.
That's fantastic.
Beautiful.
Thank you very much, Tanvir. I think I'd love to do this again.
Same here.
And so we'll see what we can do. But it's great to talk to you today, and thank you very much for taking part.
I just wanted to say thanks, guys, and what you're doing here, I think, is hugely needed. So kudos to you guys for taking the step here. Really, really enjoyed being on.
Awesome. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Appreciate that. All right, wonderful.